Okay, let's answer some questions about limits using this graph. So in particular, let's look at these questions. So first of all, let's look at this. What's the limit as x approaches 2 of f of x? Okay, well, we need to find out what the left-hand limit is, and we need to find out what the right limit is. And if these two are the same thing, then this limit exists, and it will be whatever that answer is. Okay, so here's x equals 2. Now, what happens as you go on points where your x coordinates get closer to 2? What are the y coordinates getting closer to? And we can see that the y coordinates are getting closer to 1. So the left limit of this is going to be 1. Now, what about the right limit? If we're approaching 2 from the right, and my x coordinates are getting closer than 2, what are the y coordinates getting closer to? And again, the y coordinates are getting closer to 1. So my left limit and my right limit are the same, and so this exists, and it will equal 1. Now, what about this question? What is f evaluated at 2? Well, you find the point whose x coordinate has 2. And that point is the point 2, 1. Now what f does is it maps the x coordinate into the y coordinate. So f evaluated at 2 is equal to 1. Now notice that it didn't matter what this was for this limit to exist. Here they happen to be the same thing, but this does not make any difference at all in the decision on whether that limit exists. Okay, now let's look at this next one. What happens as, what's the limit as x approaches -1 of f of x? Well, we need to see what the left limit and the right limit are going to be. So as I'm approaching -1 from the left, and the x coordinates are getting closer to -1, what are the y coordinates getting closer to? And they're getting closer to 1. As I approach -1 from the right, my y coordinates are getting closer to and are equal to 1. These are the same, and so this limit does exist, and it'll be equal to 1. Now, what is f evaluated at -1? Well, you have to find the point whose x coordinate is -1. And when I look at this, there is no point whose x coordinate is -1. So this does not exist. All right, what about as x approaches -3? What are we going to have for that? Well, I need to get the left and the right limit. Okay, as I'm approaching x coordinates of -3 from the left, what are the y coordinates approaching? The y coordinates are approaching -1. And as my x coordinates get closer and closer to -3, when I'm approaching from the right, what are the y coordinates getting closer to? The y coordinates are getting closer to -1. These two are the same, and so the answer to this is -1. Now, what is f evaluated at -3 for this one? Well, I find the point whose x coordinate is -3. There it is. That point has coordinates -3, 1. So f maps the x coordinate into the y coordinate. So f evaluated at -3 is equal to +1. Now notice it does not matter that these two are not equal. The only thing that determines what the limit is what the left and the right limit are. Okay, finally, what about this one? What is the limit as x approaches +1? Does it exist? Well, what's the left limit? Well, if my x coordinates are approaching +1, from the left, the y coordinates are approaching and are in fact equal to +1. What's my right limit? Well, as my x coordinates approach 1 from the right, what are the y coordinates approaching? The y coordinates are approaching 0. Now, my left and right limits are not the same, and so this limit does not exist. And what is f evaluated at 1? Well, I find the point whose x coordinate is 1, and we can see that the point 1, -1 is on the graph, and f maps the x coordinate into the y coordinate. So f evaluated at +1 is equal to -1. And that answers those questions for this particular video.